Hello and welcome. The editorial today refers to Rajasthan lessons. This means lessons from Rajasthan. What was there in Rajasthan and what gave lessons is to be looked into this passage. So, the subtopic uh, speaks something about it. If the truce in the Congress is to endure, both factions must mend their ways. What does it say? If the truce, if the compromise in the Congress is to endure, is to continue, both factions, both groups, which both groups, the groups that were involved in fights, fighting within the party, Mr. Gehlot versus Mr. Pilot. Both factions must change their ways, must correct their ways. So, if a compromise or an agreement to stop fight is something to last, something to exist in Congress, then both the fighting groups must change their ways, change their behavior. So let us move to the passage. The crisis in the Congress in Rajasthan that nearly brought down the government led by Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot has been over. So the crisis in the Congress in Rajasthan that nearly brought that refers to the crisis. Here that refers to crisis because that is followed by nearly brought down the government led by Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot. So this the object of this pronoun refers to the crisis. The crisis brought down the government led by Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot. So that refers to the crisis. The crisis in Congress in Rajasthan that nearly brought down the government. It didn't bring down the government, it nearly brought down the government. So, it says that there came a situation where there was high probability that Ashok Gehlot would go from his chair of chief ministership. Now that crisis has blown over, that has gone, that is no more now. The crisis is no more now. So this is the opening sentence of this passage. The group led by Sachin Pilot has reiterated its loyalty to the party, though the standoff cost him the post of Deputy Chief Minister and State Party Chief. So it carries a very simple meaning. It says that the whole group belonging to Sachin Pilot emphasized their loyalty to the party, to the Congress. But then, since he had been responsible for the crisis, he had to lose deputy chief ministership as well as the post of party chief, state party chief. He was the chief of Rajasthan State Congress Party. He was holding the post of deputy chief minister as well. Both he had to lose. The truce is an outcome of realization on both sides that their positions had become self-destructive and unsustainable. Now, this relates to the fact that a fight never benefits either of the parties. So if there is a fight between two, none of them are going to benefit from the fight. So a truce, a compromise uh, is has proved, has made them realize that their positions, their actions were self-destructive, and that cannot be maintained for benefit of either party, either group, either faction. Mr. Gehlot faced the risk of losing the government, while Mr. Pilot stared at the unnerving prospect of life outside the Congress. So both had the disadvantage. Mr. Gehlot had the disadvantage of risking his government, losing his government, and Mr. Pilot found that he was not comfortable outside Congress party. So both had something to lose. The turmoil, the disturbance in Rajasthan has also been yet another occasion to note with deep concern the tendency of judiciary to overstep its remit set by law, brazen partisanship of the governor, and misuse of central agencies to tilt the political balance. Now, what are these things? What are these things? It says that the disturbance, the turmoil in Rajasthan brought about some deep concerns related to three things. The first one is judiciary that uh, crossed its set limits and set it limits to interfere uh, into this into this infight within Congress. The second is the bold and shameless biasness of the governor. The governor is always biased towards the ruling party. This is a fact because it is appointed by the ruling party. Of course, the appointment is done by the President of India, but there is much upper hand of the ruling party in appointment of, or rather selection of a candidate for this post. So this is more of a political post as of now. So this the governor was fully biased, shamelessly biased towards Bharatiya Janata Party. And the third is misuse of central agencies to tilt the political balance. Misuse of central agencies refers to all those authorities responsible, including the BJP, to tilt to move the political balance in favor of BJP. The crisis was primarily internal to the Congress, but the BJP's maximalist approach to capture power at all costs was evident. So it says that the issue was internal to the Congress, but BJP put all its effort at a maximalist approach. Maximalist refers to something that is extreme. It took an extreme approach to capture power at all cost, and this was evident, this was apparent from the actions of BJP. The unseemly power struggle had derailed governance in the state in the midst of pandemic. So the power struggle brought down the administration of the state amid pandemic, which was the first thing to be looked after. Now that a settlement has been reached, the center and the state, the BJP, and all sections within the ruling party must come together to combat the pandemic. So now there is truce, no disturbance is now over there. So the administration should work now properly, and all the concerned, the state, the center, the BJP, and other sections related within the ruling party must join hands to combat the pandemic. So this gives a picture of what happened, the events that occurred. The first para gives um, uh, uh, a blueprint of the events. The Congress is facing the most severe crisis in its history, and it cannot afford any complacency in keeping its house in order. So, Congress is having severe crisis in its history. It is losing governance almost all places in the country, and this is historical. This is historical. So under this condition, Congress cannot afford any misbehavior or any infight uh, while keeping the house in order, keeping the party in order. So it is more conscious about the orderliness of its party, and cannot allow any kind of disturbance in respect of that. The party is constantly at the receiving end of the Bharatiya Janata Party's relentless onslaught, and in March it lost the government in Madhya Pradesh, which it had won in 2018, along with Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh. So, sorry, the party was on receiving end. What is receiving end? It means has been losing everywhere, has been losing everywhere against BJP, and the BJP had relentlessly onslaught Congress in March elections of sorry, not elections, in March. It says that in March the Congress lost its Madhya Pradesh government, which it had won in 2018 along with Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh. Now, this was a massive jolt to the Congress. According to Mr. Gehlot's own admission, there was no communication between him and Mr. Pilot ever since the formation of the government in 2018. Now, Mr. Gehlot, under the truce, has his submissions that there was no communication between him and Mr. Pilot ever since the government was formed in 2018. That is a sad commentary on the party. This is a sad commentary. Our chief minister and a deputy chief minister are not having any communication for over a year. Is a sad thing. Mr. Pilot has said he resorted to rebellion after his grievances were unheeded, not heard. So Mr. Pilot had another issue, which he says that his grievances were not heard by the party, and that made him a rebellion. This brinkmanship might have taught them both and the party's central leadership some lessons for the future. So, this brinkmanship might have taught them both some lessons for the future. This infight, to the extent of loss of safety of the government, must come out as a lesson to uh, both the party, both of them, both the parties, uh, as Mr. Gehlot as well as Mr. Pilot, and also the central leadership of Congress party. The resolution of the crisis took the intervention of former Congress President Rahul Gandhi, who commands the royalty of both. So, the resolution, dissolution of crisis was done by intervention of Mr. Rahul Gandhi, who commands respect from both the parties. He could have resolved it earlier or even preempted the crisis altogether. Now, this is a comment of the author that Mr. Rahul Gandhi could have preempted, could have taken steps beforehand to solve the crisis altogether. There is no single model for running a political party, but the nature, history, and character of the Congress impel it to be consultative and deliberative. Deliberative in its internal and external conflict. So, conflict is something that always exists with a political party, within the party as well as outside the party. Now, Congress as such, historically and by its nature, what comes out, what appears from working of the Congress is that they impel uh, solutions by consultation and deliberation, both for internal and external conduct. So, it takes time. The consultation and deliberation takes time. The Congress, it says that Congress never behaves in a Hitler-like manner or a dictator-like manner. It always looks for consultations and deliberations. It allows both the fighting parties to speak out or put their grievances, and uh, and also there is a consultation with other learned people related to solution of the issues. So this is the behavior of the Congress. As Rajasthan demonstrated, Mr. Gandhi has a role to play in facilitating this. So the Rajasthan Rajasthan issue became a demonstration related to the role that Mr. Gandhi is to play. Mr. Gandhi has been focused on building a critique of the BJP and its government, but such politics will be effective only when reinforced by a strong organization. So, Mr. Gandhi is busy with something else. He is focusing on building a critique against BJP. He is willing to prove that BJP is not the loyal party or not a party which can run the government properly. But for this, Mr. Gandhi requires a strong organization. He has strong opinions on what should ideally be, but he has no option but to start with what it currently is. Mr. Gandhi has a strong opinion as to how Congress should look like, but he's having handicaps, and he's forced to work with what he has with him in the Congress. So this is the passage. The first para speaks about the gives a picture or a blueprint of the events that occurred and that culminated with truce. And second is the situations, other situations that and conditions of the Congress as on date, and the mm, scattered leadership of Congress as well. The intuition, the outlook of Congress party may be okay, but they have handicaps of their strong organization, and this is the drawback as of now with Congress. And the culminating points, the last points explained by the author is in the nature of an opinion, and the opinion is that the Congress must organize its party, reinforce party with strong memberships and leaderships, and until then, the Congress has this handicap of working with whatever the strength they have as of now. Thank you. Thank you with a request to like and subscribe this channel.